Welcome back, guys. I hope you guys are staying warm. Our country's going through a little bit of a winter blizzard through the Midwest. It's kind of chilly here in the Carolinas, but luckily we're inside. It's warm, and I think it's 74 degrees today. Today we're going to talk about the black car and oil coolers, and we're going to get some oil coolers in this car. One for the transmission and one for the rear gear, and we're also going to put in some duct work. Now, staying with the budget build theme of this car, I did have to go through and dig out a few different pieces and see what was going to fit, and I came up with two pieces of ductwork. One you saw when I took it apart was still in there. That's the one we're going to use for the transmission cooler. It's got a fan in it as well. I did some adjusting, replaced the fan. The one that was in it was this Atwood Detmar style. It didn't work. It still had the TRD harness on it, but even putting 12 volts directly to the fan, it didn't work. So I replaced that and put another 3-inch duct on it, and that one is good to go. But I also have another one that's going to go in that car, and I'll explain a bunch of this stuff to you here in a moment. But we're going to keep it budget build. I've got probably 150 of these in different sizes and styles throughout the years, carbon, aluminum, some plastic. It all varies on what you want to do as far as your budget, and budget is subjective. You know, that is a word that you can interpret in many different ways, and many people's budgets are different from your own. In my budget, we're going with some used ones. I've got 4 or 5 crates full of this stuff. I went through and dug some out, and I dug out a COT duct. It has a branded sticker on it right there from Crawford. It says that is exactly what this was made for, so we're going to use this one. And I did already put some holes in the floor and drill it to make sure that fit. Did some mock-up work. This one with the fan that actually blows in on the duct, you notice it's got 2 inlets on it. Now, if you put pressure into it here, it's going to follow the path of least resistance. So if you have a duct on the bottom or a cooler on the bottom, such as this, and you mount it like this, and you have air blowing in here, it's going to take the path of least resistance and blow air back out the other hose. But it's got a divider in it. Put a divider in there, and what that does is that keeps the air pressurized on this side of the cooler and blowing through the cooler while you get ambient outside pressure from the window on this side. That is what we're going to go with, these two right here. We're going to set these on the car. Now, these are Setrab type coolers. They're made in Sweden. This one's got a little grill on the front, protects it from rocks underneath the car. This is a Setrab. This is a 9.5 by 6, and this is a 9.5 by 12. Now, the good part about these is that they mount underneath the car. They have their own brackets, and we'll go underneath the car and I'll show you this. They are very efficient. Now, unlike the Supra, there's going to be one on the right for the rear end and one on the left for the transmission. I don't want to cut the floor. I want to keep it as original as possible. The floor in this car is perfect. There's nothing rotten, there's nothing rusted, there's not a whole bunch of holes done like buckshot. Unlike the Supra, where it has a stacked cooler, meaning there's one on the top and one on the bottom, and it's one piece, these are separate. We're going to install them separate. We have separate ductwork going into each window for them. Let's look here on the table. You see a wide variety of ductwork. I tried going with a dual inlet side duct for this, but unfortunately these hit the fender well and they won't work. This one's a 3 and that's a 4. They come in different sizes. There's a ton of those out there. This is a single 4-inch flat mount. It service mounts right to the package tray in the back of the car, and it's got a ring on it. This ring is flanged so that you can take I don't have one here, do I? So that you can take a duct like this that's got a flange on it, much smaller, go right on the top, bolt them together, or bolt a fan in between them, and let that blow air into the ductwork. We're not using that, it doesn't fit our need as well, it's not wide enough. You can see you can get them angled, you can get them dual angled, depending on what you need. These are both very good. This is a Hendrick style. Mounts in the back right on the package tray like this. Comes in, once again, has a flange in it. There's a bolt-in piece here with a fan on it. This goes into one of my Hendrick cars. Now, as we get more advanced, you run into coolers like this. This one mounts against the floor of the car. So if you're looking at the package tray, this is your passenger floor, your rear tire is here. This comes back, goes against the bottom of the floor, bolts through the floor with some nut inserts, and your gear cooler bolts in here. Now this has a screen on the bottom and 2 ducts on the top. What this does is take low pressure air from around the shock mounts and where your fuel line is, blows it through the ductwork, in through the cooler through the bottom, and escapes out underneath the car. Hendrick has a bunch of different designs like this, and this is another one. This design has a cover on the top This would bolt through the floor. This would be even with the bottom of your floor underneath the car, and that would cut wind underneath the bottom of the car. They pan it. That's a technical term for it. The cooler goes in here, dual fans bolt on the back. That's another different style. Like I said, this is a relentless number of cooler options out there. This is another Hendrick design. This was just for a transmission mount. Some cars I've seen would mount this in front of the dry sump tank underneath the driver's seat for more left side weight. Same thing, gear cooler outlets were here. 2 fans would bolt in here, would blow air into it and out the bottom. Hose sizes, there's a bunch of different hose sizes as well. This is a power steering cooler. This is also a power steering cooler. This one you see here has its own duct cover, which actually mounts like that. This mounts to our sway bar tube. This would hook onto it and blow cold air into it. And this would mount on the sway bar tube, run around the steering box and up to the radiator ductwork. And on the side of the radiator ductwork, you would have this little duct here, which would plug into the hose and supply cold air straight back to that. This is also a brake spindle duct. I've seen these used in the ductwork. They go on the side of the radiator. All of this will bolt together, and all of this would provide your power steering cool, fresh air. Now to some of you, this may look familiar. This is the kind of ductwork we used in our Supra. This mounted on the package tray, and on the top, we had our rear gear cooler, and on the bottom portion of it, we had our transmission cooler that went forward to the transmission. This worked really well. I've got about 50 of these that are uncut, designed just for this purpose. Like I said, it mounted perfect. We sealed it up with some weather strip, and I'll put a link to that video in the description so that you can go back and look at that as well. Some people choose to run rock guards on their oil cooler. Pretty simple. Mounts on it. It's carbon fiber. Mounts to the package tray just like that. Some people use this mounting bracket to hold it on versus the top and bottom brackets. For me, we're not using this. The way these are going to be mounted, they're going to be mounted vertically, and we already have mounts in the car. So, all of that said, let's jump on the car, install the ductwork, and get these bolted in. Now I'm going to give you guys a better up-close look at what we're actually going to use on the Shelmerdine Camry. Let's take a look real quick. This is our Setrab Gear Cooler. This is a 6x11. Now when they measure this, they measure by the core. So it's 6 inches wide by 11 inches long, not by the mounting tabs or not by the actual inlet for your fluid. You may see these with inlets on the side. You may see them with inlets on the bottom. You may see them with one inlet on the bottom, one on the top, one on the side here, one on the side there. They've come in an unlimited number of configurations, but that's how the size itself is measured. And this is the actual Crawford rear gear cooler that we're going to use. It's going to mount 45 degrees on the tray like this. It already had some holes in it, and there are some in the car. This did not come with the car. I had this one. It's an actual Crawford COT 45 degree 3-inch duct. So what I did was I lined this up with some of the holes that are in the car, made sure they fit. Some had to be opened up already, so I did that. I did not want to keep drilling holes all the way around the inside of the car and make it look like the floor was hit with buckshot. This is an 8x11, and that's what we're going to use to cool our transmission. Ports on this, when this is in the car, it mounts at an angle like this, and these are right up against the hard tunnel. I can't flip them around to the other side because the other oil cooler sits just like this, and I could never get a fitting to fit on the bottom here. So that's why we're changing the fittings on this as well. Now this is our Debotech cooler that goes in it. Like I said, there's a divider here so that that pressure from the fan goes through the cooler, doesn't take the path of least resistance, go back up the tube and out the window. This is manufactured by Debotech. Says the part number on it, BDR, Bill Davis Racing. Right hand cooler, COT 12908. That's when this one was made. Now it does have a Detmar style fan in it, and that is a sucker fan, so it pulls the air in and blows it through. We are going to use this. Like I said, I changed the fan, put new Polycon tape on it, and a new duct going in to make them both 3-inch. I put a new Deutsch connector on it and rewired it as well. I put this hole in it, and the wiring does not move, so this is going to work a lot better than what was there. This is the original fan, and as you can see, it's been ground on. It looks nasty. It's got a heavy plastic duct. And as much as I love Toyotas, one thing I hate is this clear heat shrink. Once it gets old, it gets that opaque color to it. But that's the original TRD harness that went into it. I hate the way this looks over time. So what we're going to do is we're going to be replacing that with a new harness that I will build for this fan here. Let me show you how this stuff bolts into the car. Now I say this is where everything bolts in, but in reality, this is where everything's going to rivet in. This particular duct work will go here. We'll mount on this side. And now our transmission duct, this is the original one to the car. We'll mount them here, and they will slightly overlap. Like I said, I tried to use as many of the original holes and mounting surfaces as I could. So these are going to mount like this with our gear coolers behind them. Now, this particular hose is going to go to a window. This one is going to get a screen on it. This is going to pull warm air from the inside of the car and create a low pressure area inside the car and push it through the gear cooler. These two are going to get cold air drawn in from the window in 3-inch hoses on each of these, and I will wire that myself. First, we need to get these mounted. Let's set our duct work in place. And then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rivet that down. We're going to make it very simple. We're going to use an 1/8 inch backup washer and an 1/8 inch large head rivet. We're going to keep this very budget friendly. We're not going to go with a crazy exotic fastener. This is something that many of you can get at home. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the car and I'm going to stick my hand through that side and we'll rivet this in place. Now I'm not popping that one yet. I'm just getting it close so that I can line up the others and get everything set into place. Cooler duct on top here. That's going to hold it in place. And then we will rivet that down. Like I said, our pigtail, our wiring harness for the fan, it'll get mounted to the cage here with the rest of the harness. But that's how they look for now. As you can see, the gear cooler is not in yet. You can see down to the ground. But that's the next part. Like I said, I'm really happy with the way they came out. Let's take a look at it from underneath. Now here's our installed product. We're underneath the car looking directly at it. Now I'm going to put the gear coolers up here. I'm going to show you exactly what I was talking about. So one mounts here, goes in directly like this. As I said, you can't get a 90-degree fitting on there to come out in radius. The top I'm not worried about. Now if I flipped it around this way, the problem being I could get one on the top, but I couldn't get one on the bottom because the other gear cooler goes there. So now we've got it blocked right here. As you can see, I can't get a fitting, a number 6 fitting on here and a 90 on both sides. So we're going to go with a bushing with a 90 coming out of it. And that 90 is going to loop up. The hose is going to come back with a 90. The bottom is going to do the same thing, come back up and come into the rear end housing. This one is going to be for our transmission cooler. And it's going to mount here. And as you can see, all of our rivets are in between. Now there are some other holes here from other cooler ductwork that was on the car before, but it's not what we've used. So this is how the finished product is going to look once they're mounted and I get the bushings and the hoses run. All I have to do is bolt them in with some 1/4-20s here at the top, and these are the original brackets that were in the car. But until the fittings come, I can't finish the installation and put the fittings in with a cap on it. That's going to come in about a day or two. So let's take a break until those fittings come in the mail. Welcome back, guys. It's another frigid day in South Carolina. Currently right now, it's starting to snow. I can hear it on the roof. We're back on putting the coolers in. I think this is like day 3 or 4. I do these videos in small parts, compile it all together, post it at the end. So my new fittings came in from Setrab. I ordered a bunch of them. They are bulkhead M22 2/4-inch pipe fittings for my oil coolers. Now I've already marked these. What I'm going to do now is put the fittings in them, tighten them up. There are a couple that I made specifically. They didn't have enough of what I needed in stock, so I used a lathe, turned these down to 1/4-inch pipe, and they fit like a champ. So we're going to use some of these as well. I've got new O-rings for those, but the other ones that came from Setrab, I've already put in one cooler. These are marked. We're going to get them put in the car. We're going to get everything bolted up, and then we're going to wrap up this video. So let's go ahead and jump on putting these parts together now. So this is my cooler. It's been cleaned. I put it in the car and I did the mock-up and I marked it right here with a Sharpie so you can see which way my fittings actually need to face. Now this is going to be our rear end gear cooler. This is getting number 8s put into it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and install these, and then we're going to put our fitting in with some Teflon tape, and we're going to put it in the direction of the mark on each end. So the first one we're going to put in is for our transmission cooler. We can take this fitting out because it's too big and it's not going to work for our application. This is a number 8. And as you can see with our G-Force transmission cooler, this is only a 1/4 inch pipe. This is only going to flow as big as that orifice on a number 6 fitting. So we're going to put a 90 in here, and this is going to turn back and flow towards the back of our car when it's complete. We're going to put a dab of extreme pressure lubes from CMD. We're going to put this on the bushing so it doesn't gall the threads and everything seats properly. We'll put this in first. We'll tighten it up. Up next, we've got new 90-degree Fragola AN fittings. We're going to take these, break them out of the bag. I got these because they're black. So what we're going to do is we're going to Teflon tape these, and this one's going to point straight down. Start it by hand. Then we will take our crescent wrench and we will tighten it up, and this one's going to face straight down. I want it to face straight down, so it's going to go right there, and we are good. Now on the top, this Brown & Miller fitting will fit just fine. We have plenty of clearance with the tunnel, but with this number 690 on the cooler right there, you can see how much taller that is. Well, this portion would actually hit the tunnel, and I could also not get the fitting on or off if I had a problem with tearing up this line while I'm driving the car or racing it. So we change it to that. Now I can put a straight or a 45 on here and follow the floor pan forward. This is actually going to mount in the car this way, so let's set this to the side and put our fittings in our rear gear cooler. Now I know verbally it's hard to follow why fittings are facing each way, but once we get this in the car, I'll explain all of it to you and show you exactly why they're facing a certain way and how everything's going to work. Now it's going to fit in our car like this. That's going to be our return back to the car. It'll be a lot simpler to explain once it's in the car. This is our supply. This is coming from our rear gear pump. Now it's going to have a straight fitting on it, and it's going to come up, and I'm going to tie them together to loop back to the housing. One more thing about tightening these fittings, especially when they're an MPT, National Pipe Thread, and they've got this flat boss on the end of the fitting. When you're tightening it, keep your wrench on that boss to tighten it. Don't slide it out over the threads, because you can gall these threads and your AN fitting will not want to seat properly. Just something I thought I'd share. Up next, let's set this aside, clean up this mess. Now here's our transmission cooler. We're going to go ahead and install this. This one is going to go here. Now the one thing that I do have to do, if you notice with our mounting bracket here, I can't get hardware in there if this cooler is actually installed. So what we're going to do first is, especially that bolt alone, so we're going to put the mounting hardware in. Mounting hardware is pretty simple. Just 1/4 20s. We're going to put that in there. I'm going to stick a nut on here, 2 turns to keep it from falling out. The rest of them, pretty simple to do. So we're going to put this one in. Pull it up. Check the fit. I'm happy with how flush it fits. And as you can see, my rivets are nowhere near the cooler or the mounts. I was going to weather strip that particular portion, But with the way it sits and seals so tight against it, I don't need that. So first thing we're going to do, I'm going to put some hardware in here and hold it in place. 1/4 here. Flat washer, it's going to go on next. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to stick our half nut on here. 1/4 half nut. Nylock, pretty simple. This goes on, tighten it up, this thing's not going to fall out. We'll go around, put all 4 in, and we'll come back with a ratchet wrench and we'll tighten them up. Sounds like the snow is really coming down out there now. Get all these installed. I think I'm gonna go inside and play Red Dead. Haven't done that in a while. All right, now we can loosen this one up. Whoops, dropped the nut. Now this one's gonna face up, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn it in sideways, get it in here, pop it in, and there we go. Now with that bolt, throw the nut on it here. I'm sorry, we'll throw the washer on it, and we'll get the nut on it there. That's pretty good. Do the bottom. Nice. Sealed up nice and firm. And this is why I had to put that bolt in. There's no way you're going to get that bolt in there or an Allen head, button head bolt in there without putting it in, then putting the cooler on first. Kind of a pain in the butt. Everything's sealed up nice. None of the rivets are touching anything. Nothing's in the way. Both coolers are within the mounts. Awesome. I am super happy with that. Let's take a look at the finished product. A lot of you are wondering about the routing on these fittings. Now let me show you what I'm thinking. So here, the standard fitting is fine. The line will go on, we'll wrap around, and we'll go towards the front of the transmission. Won't interfere with the drive shaft or anything once I cable tie it in place. Down here on the bottom, if the standard fitting was here, I can't even get this in and thread it onto the fitting without that interfering with the drive shaft tunnel. With the actual AN fitting like this down here, it comes out even further and this won't even make the turn. But with this NPT fitting here and a 90, I can put a 45 on it going forward to our transmission. Pretty simple. When it comes to our rear gear cooler, we've got 2 of them facing up. Pretty simple. Reason being, I can get a number 890 on here. I don't have the one that I want now, but the 120 fits on here just fine. And if I can get a 120 on here, I can definitely get a 90 on here. This radius is the same as a 90, and that hose is going to come straight back. Now, when it comes to the bottom, I'm just going to put a straight on it, and both of these hoses are going to get tied up at the top and then go back to our rear end cooler. Pretty simple. All I have to do now is get the correct hoses for it, but we'll do all that once I get the actual rear end in the car. Now that it's winter, it's snowing outside, I can hear it on the roof. My plan is to just continue along with all of the small things that take a lot of tedious time, like this gear cooler. Let's take a look at all of this and its installation from the top. Now you can see how everything's installed down on the lower package tray on the passenger side. Over here we have our rear gear cooler, both 45-degree ducts going up. It's weather stripped, sealed in place, and riveted in. And then on the inside edge, we have our transmission cooler. One has a 4-inch blower in it that's got a Deutsch connector on it. We'll wire that in for power when it's time to wire the car. Everything's held in place, and I'm happy with the entire setup. Now let's take a look at a few other things I've been working on. Back here on the table, I completed our radiator. This oil cooler came from DEI, and the radiator is from ICE, Innovative Cooling Equipment. This is an old cup car radiator. I made the sides for this so that they seal with weather strip. I made the top. This is the fan. The brackets are a little bit different. The one on the bottom came from one fan and the one from the top came from Gibbs. These will fit just fine. This fits just like that, pretty simple. I did TIG weld the top onto our coolant can. This is our overflow expansion tank. It also gives you a level on it. So I don't like a sealed system. I don't pressurize the system like that. I use a simple radiator cap where they blow off a 38 to 42 pound cap. There's a sight glass with a pill in it. Tells you how full it is, pretty simple. This will be the air vent that purges air pockets out of our cooling system. The line will run from here to the top of the radiator there. Highest point of the radiator where air will come out is right there. We'll purge it out here. We have a number 10 on the bottom of the expansion tank. That will supply us with fresh water to fill the system. Provides a suction port into the lower radiator hose to keep it full. Oil filter mount, I picked that up, that's going in. I had one that was similar to this. I didn't like the way the back mount was on it, so I traded a friend of mine. Fill camp, fixed the alternator, got it back. Here I've got some cardboard, simple construction paper. We're gonna make a template and a pattern for all of our ignition components, and we're gonna cut that out of aluminum, and we're gonna make an ignition tray. This one doesn't fit the way that I want, and I can't get all 3 pieces on it without them kind of being cobbled in there. It looks like shit. One other thing that I did build, I'm gonna show you real quick. Allow me to bestow upon you my hillbilly hood prop. It is only temporary. This is a Richardson dry brake. The one that came with the car was an exact copy of this. I had a spare one over in my parts building, so I made this. The original one said BDR CT022 on it. I didn't want to destroy that. But I had this one, and it had a dent on the end that I straightened out and made round again. But I took it to work with me, popped a hole in it, 1 3/4, had a piece of 1 3/4 aluminum radiator tubing, made the neck, TIG welded the bung on it that came from SRI with the cap, screws right on. And the cap, I center drilled on the lathe with a 1032, bottomed it out so that the cable is still loose. Has an O-ring on it, prevents it from leaking, and externally, it still appears correct with the correct dry brake on it. Now, my favorite part about this whole thing is that you can still take a dunk can and fill this. Standard VP 5-gallon race can, most people use these, you can get them at SRI, and it easily allows you to measure every time you put 5 gallons in a car. Best part is, with that tip and that 1 3/4 opening, feels like a champ. I've also made these with dry brakes where they have a welded flange on the inside. I've just machined that off, taken everything out of the inside, welded a flat plate here with this actual cap on it here, and that works just as well too. On this car, I wanted to put it on the inside, make it a little more user-friendly, and conceal it a little bit more. But that's how it goes on. I hope you guys find that useful, and I hope you can use it on your car too. Well guys, that's a wrap on our Camry for this video. We have the gear cooler installed, the transmission cooler installed, and the duct work. I hope that helped you guys. A lot of times I get questions from people through social media and even some emails that show a picture of a hole in the floor, and they ask, what goes here? This car has the original mounts for Setrab oil and gear coolers. So that's what went into it, and that's what we used. And we used one of the original duct, and we added a second, which fit this car perfectly and should have been there according to some of the pictures that I found. Now, when it comes to the dry brake in the back, the Richardson, this car came with a Richardson, exact copy of the one that's in there. The only thing is it was inscribed with an electric pencil and said BDR CT022 on it, and I didn't want to destroy that one. You got to remember, they're only original once. That part's original, I'm going to keep it original. If I decide to sell this car down the road, I will put that part back in the car with it. But I had this one, it had a dent in it, put a hole in it with an 1 3/4 rotor broach, put a tube in it and a bung on it that takes a threaded fuel cap with an O-ring. It makes it very easy when you want to fill this car on a track day. I hope you guys can use that. I've seen some of the stuff that many people have put together out there, and I'll be honest with you, it's scary. I wouldn't want to drive around in a car like that and crash it. I've seen some people with boat caps on there that fit loose and vents that just have like an engine breather hose clamped on it. They never raced with that stuff. That stuff's scary and you shouldn't do it. This car has the proper overflow in it that flows out the back of the car with a flapper valve on it that was made by Richardson as well. All of that I'm going to retain, and it's going to work and provide safety to it. The fill plate in the car is also going to have rollover check valves in it, so it's going to have 2 levels of protection. Some of the things that you guys have asked are about the budget on this car. I haven't done a budget breakdown on it so far, but I do have a lot of the stuff written down on a notepad. Initial cost of the car, what it costs to paint it, I did touch up everything, cleaned it up. We're talking about paint supplies, masking tape, paper, paint itself, new crush panels for the front, radiator, oil cooler, fixing the duct dry brake I had, the cap I bought. All of that stuff we're going to add up and get a running tally. And when it comes to the suspension, I had a few people ask, hey, what are you going to do with the circle track suspension that was on the car? Are you going to sell it to recoup money, or are you just going to put a road course suspension on it and put that stuff away? That's kind of up in the air. I haven't really decided what avenue of approach I'm going to take with that. If you guys had this car, comment below. Would you sell the old stuff to recoup your money, or would you hold on to it for resale value to sell with the car down the road to someone that wants to restore it back to its correct oval track configuration? I'm kind of torn on which one to do. I've got a lot of the stuff. I don't know if I need to keep that, and I know a lot of it's still available. You let me know. We are going to put 8-degree spindles on it. We are going to put a road course housing on it. We're going to reuse the truck arms, lower control arms. Going to put all new ball joints in it. I do have the center link. I do have the right pitman arm and the right idler arm. We're going to put all that stuff back in there. The upper control arm is going to be different. All the ball joints, tie rods, all that's going to be different. Steering box, we're going to go with a 10-to-1. I have a couple of those. So that's where that car is headed right now. Some people have asked about the Supra. One particular person was Jason Stark. He asked, are you going to run the Supra, or did you just rebuild it to put in your collection in the back of a building? So the Supra was built to drive. That's my new track day car. The truck is here. It's under a cover. It has been, best way to put it is mothballs. We recently took it to the Americana show. It's got no oil in it. Well, I say no oil, but it's got about a gallon in the engine. It's been fogged. Carburetor's dry, fuel cell's dry, all the fuel lines have been blown out. There's no fuel in it, there's no battery in it, so it can't corrode the box. It's basically mothballed. The motor's been capped off. I've raised the carburetor, taken the spacer out, put a block off plate, put the carburetor back on it. The tailpipes have been blocked off, so no cold air can get into the engine, cause any kind of corrosion problem as well. But this car will be run. I did run it one time. It did have a fueling issue. I built a new carburetor, new fuel pump, changed the fuel line from the pump to the carburetor. Did a bunch of small things. This car runs great. I'm very happy with it. We took it to Americana as well. If you guys came out to that show and I gave you a hat or a contingency sticker pack, I greatly appreciate it. Hopefully by the end of summer, I'm hoping that this Camry will be on all 4 wheels and be going through setup. I have an engine, transmission, gear. I have everything to put it together. It's just a time and priority thing. Running this car, taking it to a show here and there, I'm definitely going to do that. So keep your eyes open on social media, and I'll tell you where we're going to go as far as that. So the next one is more of a comment than it is a question, and it's something I've gotten a lot of recently, and it comes from Demon Dunk. It says, another great video. I like your no-nonsense approach to building, and the fact that you don't use sponsorship or advertise things you don't use. Watching your video after a great Christmas with my family. Keep up the good work. Well, I appreciate the support, and I've received that comment and those wordings from several people through social media, YouTube, and even some emails, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that you guys see that I'm not somebody's pitch monkey trying to make a living off of you. You know, this is more of an educational thing than anything. I'm not here to tell you somebody else's story. I'm not here to fill your head with lies. I'm not here to be a social media influencer. I don't need that bullshit. I don't need that headache. I'm here being me, and it's just me. That's all you ever see is just me. And I use products that I have used throughout the years, things that I know have pros and cons. Some things are better than others for some uses. Some things may be inferior, but they have a good use in something else. Your hard-earned money is your money to spend. You can spend it on whatever you want. I don't like to waste my money. And a lot of people ask, well, how can you afford this and do all this? It's not the money that you make, it's how you spend it and how you recoup it. Remember that. You know, a lot of people think, well, I have $1 million and I do all this. I'm not impressed by that. You know, what you're able to do with your own 2 hands and the amount of work you're able to do yourself is more impressive than what you're able to buy from somebody. I also get a lot of hate from a wide gamut of people because I put things like built not bought in posts that I've made on social media. As you see here, I'm build it myself. There are a lot of people out there that love to use the term I and we and then follow it up with restored. But in reality, they load a car in a trailer, they take it to Jack down the road. He does the body work and English wheels the fenders. And Frank over here paints it, and Steve over there decals it, and John back here puts a motor in it. And literally they're, in my eyes, nothing more than an expedited transport company hauling a car around for everybody else to do the work. Now in the hot rod industry, you'll see that. Guys at like the Oakland Roadster Show win the Riddler Award first thing they're doing is like, hey, I want to thank this guy for building my chassis, and this guy for paint, and this guy for doing this, and my team of guys helped me put it together, and I did that, and we won this award. But they like to thank a lot of people. You know, it's just like people that tell you they're a restoration expert on race cars. Some of the funniest shit I've ever seen in my life is people saying that, and then you look at their bio on Facebook as they're trying to tell you that they're a restoration expert and that they have verified a car, and you look at their job title and it's turning plastic pellets into Frisbees, or they get embarrassed and called out by their job, that they take their job title down from there, and they've never had a job in racing other than hauling a car on a trailer to somebody else to work on it. That's not a restoration expert. That's not an authority. You know, that's not a historian. That's nothing. That's hilarious is what it is, because you have large groups of people that believe if they comment on everything on social media, that makes them an expert. Well, it makes them an internet expert, but it doesn't make them an expert on race cars, because they say, well, I verified this car is real. Well, when did you build that car? When did you work for that team? When did you go there to the races with that car and change that motor and know that car got wrecked and then it got rebodied? You don't. You're reading it on the internet because you were never there and you never did it. I can't verify that that's a Kirk Shelmerdine car, but I can go talk to people that worked on it. I can go talk to people that built it. I can go talk to people that bought it from the auction when it came from Welcome, North Carolina, with a bill of sale that they bought it from that person. I can go there, and that paperwork and those people verify that. So there are certain things that when you see people and they love to spout off to you, well, you know, I'm the authority and the expert on this. Well, when did you work there? When did you work on that? And some of these people, I mean, they've never had a job doing anything other than chasing ambulances or playing Earl Scheib with a year one catalog. They're suddenly, since COVID, the biggest authorities and experts, and they know everything on this driver and this car and that. All that information, if you wanted it yourself, you can go find it too. It's like chassis numbers. You know, there are a couple websites out there, you know, Ultimate this, Ultimate that tell you a chassis number on it. They're not always true. And here's how I can tell you that. Since COVID, some of those websites have updated and put chassis numbers on there that people have emailed them and said, I have this car, you need to correct that and put it on there. That doesn't make it right. I've seen some cars that have showed up to the racetrack and they would mail an entry form in a week before or a month before, say we're gonna run car number 7. They get to the track, they unload it from the hauler, they run it around the track, they hit the wall. They don't end up running car number 7 in the race. They end up running car number 12 after they pull it off the hauler and they run their backup car. Car number 7 ends up getting crashed. And then people buy wrecked car number 7 that never made it to the race and been sitting behind a barn in some hillbilly's backyard for 15 years. And they tell everybody, this car won there. I gotta tell you, this car won. And that car never raced there. But you wouldn't know that if you didn't work for the team and people at the track knew, hey, that car crashed out and went back in the trailer, back to the shop, stripped and thrown out in the woods. But you find people on the internet that believe because they found something off of Facebook underneath somebody's carport rotted to shit, they're suddenly the expert. It all comes from experience. And if these people on a daily basis go to work at some company that is not a race team and they turn around and tell you they're an expert on something, you honestly need to take a good deep dive into what you're reading and take it with a grain of salt. That's just my 2 cents. I hope it helps many of you. That's a wrap on this video. If you've got questions, comments, add them below. Like, subscribe if you want. Message me, email me at stockcarsurplus@gmail.com if you've got a question as well. If you want it to be anonymous, email me. I won't put your name out there. It's pretty simple. If you got something you want to say, add it in the comments below and let me know. You can always reach me at social media, Instagram and Facebook at Stock Car Surplus. I look forward to hearing from all of you, and the next video will be out soon. Thanks, guys.